At 9 o'clock on the evening of Thursday, April 18, 1912, in the middle of a tremendous thunderstorm, an ocean liner pulled slowly into New York Harbor and prepared to dock. The ship was the Carpathia, one of dozens that regularly plied to and fro across the North Atlantic. Normally, her arrival would have attracted little attention among the hustle and bustle of the busy port. But this time it was different. Tens of thousands of people had crammed themselves onto dockside and were waiting expectantly. For the Carpathia carried not just her own passengers and crew, but the traumatized survivors of a terrible calamity as well. 4 days earlier, on the night of Sunday, April 14th, the world's largest ship, the Titanic, had hit an iceberg in the middle of the ocean and sunk. Nearly 1,500 people had died. It was the worst ever single shipwreck at sea. Thanks to wireless technology, news of the event had begun to spread almost immediately, so that the late editions of the Monday newspapers in Europe and North America were already reporting that the great ship had suffered some kind of accident. Many of these first accounts, though, turned out to be wildly inaccurate. Some said that the liner had been badly damaged but was still afloat and was being towed to Halifax, Nova Scotia for repairs. Others reported the Titanic had indeed sunk, but that all the people on board had been rescued. By Tuesday, as more detailed reports filtered through from the Carpathia and other ships that had rushed to the scene, the scale of the disaster and the awful loss of life had become clear. The world was in shock. The Titanic was a brand new ship. This was her first voyage across the Atlantic, and she incorporated the latest innovations in shipbuilding technology. Her builders and virtually everyone else believed that she was practically unsinkable. In the next few weeks, official inquiries into the accident were held in New York and London. Survivors were interviewed and dozens of expert witnesses cross-examined. Both inquiries had the same goals: to find out exactly what had happened, why it had happened, and who, if anyone, was to blame. The age of the ocean liner. The Titanic began her short existence on March 31st, 1909, when her keel was laid down in the shipyards of Harland and Wolff, a shipbuilding company based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. She had been dreamed up just under 2 years before, in the year of 1907, by J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of the White Star Line Shipping Company, and Lord Peary, chairman of the board of Harland and Wolff. At that time, mass air travel was still decades away, and the only means of carrying people and cargo across the sea was by ship. During the previous half-century, steam had been taking over from sail as the main way that ships were powered. The White Star Line was one of the many steamship companies that had sprung up, all competing for a share of the trade, particularly on the most profitable route across the Atlantic between Europe and North America. In this story, we'll see many text features, and one of them is going to be a picture of a poster that was advertising the ocean travel to New York or to Boston, and take a minute and look over that poster. And then we also have over here a photograph, and photographs are often used to show things that are happening. These are Titanic survivors aboard the Carpathia. So they had survived. Page 4. There's a subheading here, the Blue Riband. In the 1860s, a rivalry developed. You might not know what a rivalry is, but a rivalry exists when two people are competing to do the same thing between the different companies as to which could cross the Atlantic the fastest. An unofficial prize, the Blue Riband, was awarded to whichever ship held the record, bringing with it publicity to the company who owned the ship. Among the main companies competing for the Blue Riband were the White Star Line and its arch rival, Cunard. Thomas Ismay, Bruce Ismay's father, owner of the White Star Line at this time, realized there were more and more rich people wanting to travel. And they didn't just want speed, they wanted luxury as well. Ismay commissioned a new kind of liner from Harland and Wolff, which was both very fast and very, very comfortable, especially in first class. The new liners were a great success, but eventually Ismay decided it was simply too expensive to build liners that were both most luxurious and the fastest afloat, so he chose to leave the race for the Blue Riband to Cunard and the others. Though no longer competing for the prize, White Star ships would still be fast, but they would certainly be the most comfortable. Thomas Ismay died in 1899, and his son Bruce took over the firm. Then in 1902, the American tycoon J.P. Morgan gained control of the business and made it part of the shipping combine International Mercantile Marine, though Bruce Ismay continued to run the White Star Line. Ismay launched a range of increasingly large ships, culminating in the Oceanic in 1899 and the Celtic in 1901, at the time the biggest ships to ever have been built. Then, in 1906, the company's pride was dealt a terrible blow. Their rival Cunard launched the Mauretania and the Lusitania, liners that were even bigger, faster, and more luxurious. They could complete the transatlantic journey in under 6 days. And not surprisingly, they grabbed the lion's share of the passenger trade. Look at the word transatlantic. Trans means across. So what do you think transatlantic means? Let's look at this picture at the bottom too. The caption here says, the Titanic left and the Olympic right under construction in Belfast. Olympic, Titanic, and gigantic. Bruce Ismay and Lord Peary knew they had to respond to the challenge and decided they would go one better by building 3 new liners to be called the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Gigantic, later renamed the Britannic. They would be bigger than the Cunard ships, carry more passengers, and even be more luxurious, if not quite as fast. Designs were quickly sketched out and preparations made to start the building. It was decided to stagger the construction so that the experience gained with the first ship could be applied to the building of the others. First would come the Olympic, then the Titanic, and then the Gigantic. The keel of the Olympic was laid down in December 1907. She took 3 years to build and was finally ready for launching in October 1910, by which time work on the Titanic was already far advanced. Although the original plans for the 2 ships had been almost identical, as building went on, various changes were made to the Titanic's design. In particular, it was decided to make some of the first-class facilities even larger and more luxurious. This meant that the Titanic would end up weighing about 1,000 tons more than the Olympic, making her the world's biggest ship. Launch day. The Titanic's launch date was eventually set at May 31st, 1911, the same day that Hartland and Wolff were due to hand over the Olympic to the White Star Line. It was a great occasion in Belfast, where shipbuilding was by far the most important industry, and it seemed as if half the city turned out to see the 2 ships. Lord Peary was there, of course, as were Bruce Ismay and his wife and children. Even J.P. Morgan himself turned up. At the center of them all was Thomas Andrews, the managing director of the shipyard, who had personally overseen the construction of the 2 ships and had played an important part in their design. Although the Titanic was now afloat, she needed a lot of work before she was ready for service. Her interior needed to be fitted out, her funnels built, and engines and other machinery installed. All this took nearly a year, but gradually the ship neared completion. She was really awe-inspiring. Everything about her was big, from her propellers to her first-class dining room. This is the Titanic docked in Belfast, ready for fitting and installation. Steam power. This page has a really great diagram on it. That's a good text feature so that you can see things and their labels and understand what each of these parts does. The Titanic's powers came from 3 huge steam engines. To the left and right sides of the ship were 2 traditional style piston or reciprocating engines, the largest of their kind ever built, nearly 40 feet tall. The third central engine was a turbine, powered by used steam from the 2 reciprocating engines. 200 men were needed to keep the fires lit, and when the steam was traveling at a cruising speed, they went through nearly 600 tons of coal every 24 hours. Smoke from the fireboxes escaped from the first 3 of the ship's funnels. The 4th funnel wasn't, in fact, necessary, but it was there because the ship's designers thought that the ship would look odd without it. Instead, it was used as a giant ventilation shaft, carrying cooking smells away from the ship's galleys. You can see each part. There's the reciprocating engines. Each engine had 4 cylinders that were filled with high-pressure steam and drove a crankshaft attached to a 3-bladed propeller. The turbine engine. Steam from 2 reciprocating engines was fed to a turbine engine that drove the central propeller. And there's the propeller and the crankshaft. Boilers. To generate steam, there were 29 boilers, each one 16 feet in diameter, heated by no fewer than 162 fireboxes, in which coal fires blazed night and day. That's all for today.